I mean, that's essentially what happens when you dispense with the category of sex as a real thing, because that's what gender ideology ultimately does. It basically says sex isn't a real thing we observe out there in the world, so that there just are males and females. These is sort of a convention that doctors and sort of Western medical professionals, they started attaching certain body parts to this thing they called male and other body parts to this thing called female. But it's not a real thing. What's real is this kind of internal subjective sense. But of course, the previous argument, the argument that women had to overcome was that this idea that we're sort of defined by our cultural stereotypes. So if you're a woman, well, you shouldn't like to play sports and you shouldn't want to have a job outside your home or whatever it is. But what was the argument? It was that, well, the biology, the fact that you're female shouldn't so narrowly dictate all of these other categories, maybe some of which perhaps, physical strength and things like that, or preferences. Yeah, there's sort of average preferences that women tend to have more than men. It doesn't mean that if you're, say, a young woman and you don't really want dolls and you want to play with Legos, right? That just means you're atypical as a female. You're just slightly less not at the top of the bell curve. It doesn't mean that makes you a male. But if you don't have the category male and female anchored, you have no way of distinguishing the reality of sex from the stereotypes. So they get rid of that. Now all they have is stereotypes. And so if you look at some of these gender identity questionnaires, as Chris said, it sounds like an exaggeration. But it's like, well, if you like to wear nail polish and you like your hair to be long, and you like to play with dolls, that means that you're a woman. I mean, it's literally all you have is these bundles of stereotypes. And so it's not only completely incoherent philosophically, it's profoundly regressive. And you can especially see that with some of these adult men that dress up as drag queens as women. No women look like drag queens, right? They're sort of really bizarre parodies of the female form, which is really exactly what's happening. And unfortunately, it seems discourteous to sort of point that out. But I think, ultimately we need to just call a spade a spade.